The massive battleship Eternal Dawn shook violently as another plasma blast tore through its hull. Admiral Taman gripped his command chair, watching the holographic display show red warning lights across every system. Around him, the bridge. Crew worked frantically at their stations, their faces pale with fear. Direct hit on Deck 7, shouted Communications Officer Jinwoo, his voice cracking with stress. We've lost another shield generator. Taman stared at the tactical screen in disbelief. 3 months ago, the Galactic Council commanded the most powerful fleet in known space. Their ships were marvels of technology, equipped with energy shields that could stop planet-killing weapons and laser arrays that could slice through asteroids. They had never lost a major battle in over 200 years. Now they were dying. The Vorthok swarm moved like a living nightmare across the starfield. Their bioships looked nothing like the sleek metal vessels of civilized space. Instead, they resembled massive insects made of bone and flesh, with tentacles that could crush a destroyer and acid sacs that melted through the strongest armor. Worst of all, they thought as one mind, coordinating attacks with perfect precision. Lieutenant Hyan-Woo, what's our shield status? Taman called out, though he already knew the answer would be bad. The young officer's clawed hands danced across his control panel. 12% in falling, sir. It's maybe 10 minutes before complete failure. Around them, the void lit up with explosions. The Harmony's Edge, a heavy cruiser that had served for 50 years, split in half as Vorthok biomissiles burrowed through its core. The Peaceful Dawn tried to retreat, but 3 insect-like fighters swarmed it, their acid dissolving the ship's hull in seconds. Tae-Min had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had fought pirates, rebellious colonies, and space storms that could tear apart moons. But this was different. The Vorthok didn't just want to win battles or claim territory. They consumed everything in their path, turning entire star systems into empty graveyards. Sir, incoming transmission from the Starlight Hope, Jinwoo reported. Captain Haewon says they're down to emergency power. The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Haewon's desperate face. Behind her, smoke filled the bridge as her crew tried to contain fire spreading through the ship. Taman, we can't hold them much longer, she said, coughing as smoke entered her lungs. They're adapting to our weapons faster than we can modify them. Every time we change frequencies, they develop immunity within minutes. Taman nodded, grimly. The hive mind learned from every encounter, sharing knowledge instantly across millions of bioships. What killed one Vorthok vessel became useless against the rest within hours. Fall back to defensive formation, Delta 7, he ordered. Protect the evacuation ships. But even as he gave the command, Taman knew it was hopeless. The civilian transports carried millions of refugees from the outer colonies. Families who had watched their worlds burn as the swarm passed through. Those ships had no weapons, no shields. Nothing but hope that the military could protect them. Lieutenant Hyan-Woo suddenly straightened at his station. Admiral, I'm detecting massive Vorthok reinforcements dropping out of hyperspace. Count is, sir, there are thousands of them. The tactical display updated, showing wave after wave of bioships materializing at the edge of the system. Some were as large as space stations, covered in weapon pods that pulsed with organic energy. Others moved in perfect swarms, like schools, of deadly fish hunting through the dark. Taman felt his heart sink. They had fought bravely, but this was the end. In a few hours, the core worlds of the Galactic Council would fall, and billions would die. His scaled fingers moved slowly toward the emergency command panel, hovering over a control he had hoped never to use. The Deep Space Distress Beacon was ancient technology, installed on command ships during the early days of galactic expansion. Back then, colonies on the frontier sometimes faced threats too large to handle alone, so they built these beacons to call for help from anyone who might answer. The problem was that anyone included species the Council had declared too dangerous for contact. Primitive worlds and quarantine zones where creatures lived that the civilized galaxy preferred to forget existed. Sir. Lieutenant Hyan-Woo noticed his hesitation. What are your orders? Taman closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the billions of lives depending on his decision. The Council's laws were clear. Contact with quarantined species was forbidden. But laws meant nothing if everyone was dead. "Activate the deep space emergency beacon," he said quietly. "All frequencies, maximum power, unlimited range." Ginge. Eyes widened. "Sir, that will reach the quarantine zones. The prohibited sectors." "I know," Taman replied, watching another council ship explode on his screen. "Send everything our tactical data, star charts, fleet positions, and a message. Tell whoever receives this that we need help. Tell them we're dying." The beacon activated with a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. Across the galaxy, the message began its journey, racing toward distant star systems where unknown species waited in the dark. The coffee mug slipped from Park So-young's fingers, hot liquid splashing across the control console as alarms began blaring throughout Deep Space Monitoring Station, Del 27. For 3 years, she had worked the night shift in this buried facility beneath the Australian outback, listening to empty static from the void between stars. Tonight was different. Holy ... She whispered, staring at the translation matrix as alien symbols transformed into readable text. The message was fragmenting, but key words came through clearly. "Dying, help us." 17 systems consumed. Her hands shook as she reached for the secure communications panel. Around the dimly lit command center, her small night crew looked up from their stations with curious expressions. They had no idea what they were witnessing: first contact with an alien civilization. And that civilization was screaming for help. Priority. "Alpha transmission to Cheyenne Mountain," So-young announced, her voice steadier than she felt. "Get me Admiral Lee immediately. Authorization code Broken Arrow 7. The main screen flickered to life, showing the stern face of Admiral Dong-Hyen Lee. Even at 3 in the morning, he looked alert and focused, as if he had been expecting this call. Behind him, the command bunker's walls displayed star charts and tactical readouts that most people didn't know existed. "What do you have for me, Officer Park?" Lee asked, his voice calm despite the late hour. So-young's fingers flew across her keyboard, coding the intercepted transmission. "Sir, we've received what appears to be a distress signal from approximately 47,000 light-years away. The source is ... It's not human, sir. They're under attack by something called the Vorthok Swarm." Lee's expression didn't change as he studied the incoming data, but So-young noticed his jaw tighten slightly. For decades, humanity had been secretly monitoring galactic civilization through stolen alien probe technology. They knew about the Galactic Council, their peaceful ships, and their advanced but naive approach to warfare. They also knew this day would eventually come. "Analysis confirms the signal is genuine," Lee said after a long moment. "The tactical data shows massive bioship formations overwhelming conventional energy-based defenses. Estimated casualties in the billions." On her secondary monitor, So-young watched as translation algorithms decoded more of the message. Battle reports, fleet positions, and most importantly, star charts showing the location of the conflict. And the aliens weren't just asking for help, they were providing everything needed to find them. "Sir," she said quietly, "they're losing badly. Whatever these Vorthok are, they're destroying everything in their path." Lee nodded grimly and activated his secure command channel. Within seconds, General Kim Yoo-jin appeared on a split screen, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. Behind her, So-young could see other military officials gathering around tactical displays. "Deployment authorization request," Lee stated formally. "Operation Broken Shield is now active." General Kim studied the alien transmission for exactly 30 seconds before responding. "Authorization granted. Launch the Third Fleet immediately." So-young felt her breath catch. The Third Fleet was humanity's best-kept secret, built in hidden shipyards scattered across the solar system. The world above believed humanity was still struggling to reach Mars reliably. The truth was far different. Underground factories on Luna, asteroid mining bases, and deep space construction platforms had been working for decades to build something the galaxy had never seen: a human war fleet. Across the solar system, status lights began changing from red to green. The shipyard hidden in Titan's methane clouds powered up its massive engines. Construction platforms orbiting. Jupiter's moons released sleek destroyers that looked nothing like the clumsy rockets civilians knew about. From Earth's own moon, massive dreadnoughts emerged from underground hangars, their hulls scarred from secret battles against pirates and rogue AI systems. Fleet Admiral Minho is requesting tactical briefing, reported General Kim, estimated. Travel time to the conflict zone is 11 hours, 47 minutes. Lee pulled up holographic displays showing ship positions throughout the solar system. Each represented a vessel designed specifically for war, not exploration. Not diplomacy, but the brutal business of destroying enemies. Unlike the elegant, energy weapons favored by galactic civilization, human ships carried kinetic weapons. Nuclear warheads, and most importantly, the willingness to use them without hesitation. Tell Admiral Minho that rules of engagement are weapons-free, Lee ordered. Primary objective is to eliminate the Vorthok threat. Secondary objective is to evaluate galactic military capabilities for future reference. So Young watched in fascination. As the hidden fleet began moving, ships that had been disguised as asteroids or space debris suddenly revealed themselves, their engines blazing as they formed up into battle formations. These weren't the peaceful exploration vessels that humanity showed the world. These were predators, designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Admiral, she said hesitantly, what about first contact protocols? The aliens don't know we exist. Lee's smile was cold and sharp. They will soon enough. The galaxy thinks they're civilized because they've forgotten what real warfare looks like. They're about to get a reminder. The transmission from the dying alien fleet continued playing in the background, filled with desperate pleas and tactical data. So Young realized she was witnessing history the moment humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, but they weren't coming as explorers or diplomats. They were coming as warriors, answering a call for help that the civilized galaxy couldn't handle on their own. The aliens had asked for aid from anyone who might answer, not knowing they had. Just awakened something that had been waiting in the dark for exactly this opportunity. The bridge of the UES Defiant hummed with quiet tension as Captain Minho watched the tactical display update in real time. 12 hours of hyperspace travel had brought his fleet to the edge of a war zone unlike anything humanity had ever seen before them. Two massive fleets danced a deadly ballet among the stars, but it was clear which side was losing. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Park Jae-zoon from the navigation station. Look at the size of those formations. The Galactic Council ships moved like synchronized swimmers, their hulls gleaming silver and gold in the light of the system's twin suns. They flew in perfect geometric patterns, triangles, diamonds, complex spirals that would have been beautiful if not for the destruction surrounding them. Energy beams lanced between vessels in coordinated volleys, creating light shows that painted the void in brilliant blues and greens. But it wasn't working. The Vorthok bioships swarmed around the alien fleet like angry wasps. These weren't the clean metal vessels that humans expected from space battles. Instead, they looked like nightmares made flesh, massive creatures with bone-white hulls, tentacles that writhed through space, and weapons that pulsed like beating hearts. Worst of all, they moved with purpose, adapting their tactics in real time as they learned from each engagement. Weapons Officer Choi Ha-jin, report, Captain Minho ordered. His voice calm despite the chaos before them. Ha-jin's fingers danced across her control panel, analyzing the battle data streaming from both fleets. Sir, I'm reading energy signatures off the charts. The Council ships are using some kind of particle beam weapons, but they're having minimal effect. The bioships seem to be developing immunity faster than the aliens can adjust their frequencies. Minho nodded grimly. He had studied the intercepted alien transmissions during the journey, learning everything possible about galactic warfare. The problem was obvious. These civilized species fought like they were playing a chess game, following rules and patterns that made sense in peacetime, but failed against an enemy that didn't care about honor or tradition. Range to contact? He asked. 30,000 kilometers in closing, reported Navigator Yoon Tae-young. The aliens haven't noticed us yet. I think they're too focused on staying alive. Through the main view screen, Minho watched a Council dreadnought easily, twice the size of his own ship, explode in a ball of orange fire as Vorthok biomissiles burrowed through its hull. The elegant formation that had protected it for centuries crumbled as other ships tried to fill the gap. But they moved too slowly, too predictably. All ships, this is Fleet Command, Minho announced on the battle network. Formation Tango 7, spread pattern. Deploy nuclear minefields along vectors 7 through 12. Weapons free on all Vorthok targets. The human fleet moved like a pack of hunting wolves, each ship taking position with practiced efficiency. Unlike the graceful alien vessels, human ships looked crude and brutal, angular hulls covered in armor plating, weapon ports that bristled with kinetic cannons, and engines that burned with harsh blue fire. They had been built for one purpose: to kill efficiently and survive whatever tried to kill them back. Railgun batteries loaded with tungsten penetrators, Hyjin reported. Nuclear mines deployed and armed. All ships report ready for engagement. Studied the tactical display one more time, noting how the Vorthok moved in predictable swarm patterns. They had evolved to counter energy weapons and formations that followed mathematical precision. But they had never faced an enemy that embraced controlled chaos. Target the largest bioship cluster, bearing 047, fire when ready. The first railgun volley streaked across space at a significant fraction of light speed. Invisible tungsten slugs that carried more kinetic energy than most civilized species used in their largest weapons. The Vorthok bioships adapted to absorb or deflect energy beams, had no defense against simple physics applied with extreme prejudice. The results were devastating. Tungsten penetrators punched through bioarmor like bullets through paper, creating massive wounds that vented atmosphere and bodily fluids into space. The hive mind's perfect coordination faltered for the first time as dozens of bioships died in seconds, their screams of pain echoing through whatever network connected them. Direct hits across the formation, Hyjin reported with satisfaction. Enemy ships are breaking apart. I'm reading massive internal damage. The Galactic Council fleet finally noticed the newcomers, but their reaction wasn't what Minho expected. Instead of relief or gratitude, the alien ships seemed confused, almost horrified by the human attack methods. Their elegant energy weapons continued their precise, ineffective dance, while human ships charged directly into the enemy formation. Sir, the bioships are trying to adapt, reported Communications Officer Lee Dong-sik. But they don't know what to adapt to. Our kinetic weapons don't have frequencies to adjust or energy patterns to learn. Minho smiled coldly. That's the point. Helm ramming speed on that damaged biocruiser. All hands prepare for impact. What happened next would have shocked any civilized observer. UES Defiant accelerated directly toward a Vorthok bioship, 3 times its size, using its armored prow like a spear. The impact crushed the alien vessel's forward sections. But instead of pulling away, human marines in powered armor began boarding through the breach. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships abandoned every rule of proper warfare. They used their own vessels as weapons, deployed nuclear mines in patterns that made no mathematical sense, and sent boarding parties into environments that should have killed them instantly. The Marines fought with plasma, torches, and magnetic boots cutting through bioship corridors filled with acidic atmosphere that would dissolve most species in minutes. Their armor held, their training took over, and they turned each boarded vessel into a floating tomb. The Vorthok hive mind, for the first time in its existence, experienced something it had never felt before: confusion. These new enemies fought without pattern, without predictability, and most importantly, without fear. They were willing to sacrifice their own ships and lives to destroy their opponents, a concept that no civilized species would ever consider. Human vessels swarmed through the bioship formations like piranhas, each one operating independently, while somehow coordinating perfectly with the others. It had turned warfare into an art form, combining ancient human instincts for violence with technology that could crack planets. The tide of battle began to turn as the Vorthok found themselves Facing something they couldn't adapt to, controlled chaos guided by intelligence that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Admiral Taman gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the bridge of the Eternal Dawn. Through the viewport, he watched something that defied everything he understood about warfare. A human destroyer barely one-third the size of a Vorthok biocruiser had somehow torn a massive hole in the alien vessel's hull. But instead of pulling back to a safe distance like any sensible commander would do, the human ship was actually getting closer. "Sir, the human vessel is... They're boarding the bioship," reported Lieutenant Hyanwu, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're sending troops inside." Taman's scaled hands trembled as he adjusted the tactical display for a closer view. Through the breach in the bioship's hull, he could see tiny figures in bulky armor moving through corridors that glowed with acidic bioluminescence. The atmosphere inside those ships would melt most species in minutes, yet the humans moved through it like they were walking through their own homes. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet commander," announced Communications Officer Jin-Wu. The main screen flickered, showing the face of Captain Na Minho. Unlike the panic and desperation that filled Taman's own bridge, the human appeared calm and focused, as if commanding a battle against impossible odds was just another day at work. "Admiral Taman, I'm uploading tactical data to your remaining ships," Minho said through the translation matrix. "Your current formations are too predictable. Bioships are reading your patterns and adapting faster than you can change them." Taman watched the data stream appear on his secondary screens. The human tactical recommendations looked like madness, random attack vectors, ships breaking formation to act independently, and worst of all, deliberate sacrificial attacks where vessels would ram enemy ships to create openings for others. "Your methods are..." Taman paused, searching for the right words. "They're barbaric. No civilized species fights this way." Minho's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "War isn't civilized, Admiral. But neither is extinction. Your people called for help, and we answered. Now you can either follow our lead or watch your entire fleet die while trying to maintain your dignity." Around the bridge, Taman's officers stared at their screens in horror and fascination. On the tactical display, they could see human marines moving through the captured bioship like a virus spreading through a body. They carried weapons that seemed primitive compared to galactic technology, projectile rifles, explosive charges, and close combat tools that looked more like construction equipment than military hardware. "But it was working, sir," whispered Lieutenant Hyanwu. "The bioship's vital signs are dropping rapidly. Whatever the humans are doing inside, it's killing the entire vessel." Through the viewport, they watched the massive Vorthok cruiser begin to convulse. Bioluminescent patterns that had pulsed with life now flickered and died. Internal explosions sent tremors through its hull as human demolition teams systematically destroyed critical systems from within. "How are they surviving in there?" asked Jin-Wu. "The atmospheric analysis shows acid concentrations that would dissolve our hull plating." On the screen, Minho seemed to hear the question through the translation link. "My Marines are equipped for hostile environment operations. Their armor can handle temperatures that would boil metal and atmospheres that would kill most species. Instantly, they train for this." Taman realized he was witnessing something that galactic civilization had forgotten, a species that still remembered how to fight for survival instead of following the rules of civilized warfare. The humans moved like predators, coordinating their attacks through instinct and experience rather than mathematical precision. "Admiral," came another transmission, this time from Lieutenant Colonel Bang Unesio aboard one of the boarding craft. Her voice crackled through interference as she spoke from inside the dying bioship. "We've secured the nerve center. This thing was coordinating attacks for the entire swarm in this sector. Taking it down now, the effect was immediate and dramatic." Across the battlefield, Vorthok bioships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began acting independently. Their hive mind connection had been severed, leaving individual vessels confused and vulnerable. Human ships pressed their advantage with ruthless efficiency. They didn't fight in formations or follow predictable patterns. Instead, each vessel acted like a lone wolf, attacked, striking where the enemy was weakest and disappearing before the bioships could adapt. Some human captains used their own ships as weapons, ramming biovessels at critical moments to create openings for their allies. "This is insane," muttered Hyan-Woo as he watched a human frigate deliberately overload its reactor, turning itself into a nuclear bomb that vaporized 3 bioships. They're sacrificing their own people. But even as he spoke, they could see escape pods launching from the doomed vessel. The humans had calculated the sacrifice down to the second, evacuating their crew just before the explosion. It was controlled madness, seemingly reckless but actually planned with terrifying precision. "Follow their example," Taman ordered quietly. "All ships, break formation. Begin independent attack runs on targets of opportunity." His bridge crew stared at him in shock. Breaking formation went against 2 centuries of naval doctrine. But watching the humans fight had taught him something important. Sometimes survival mattered more than following rules. The Galactic Council ships began moving more aggressively, abandoning their elegant geometric patterns for the chaotic wolf pack tactics the humans had demonstrated. It felt wrong to every instinct they had developed over millennia of civilized warfare, but the results spoke for themselves. The Vorthok bioships, evolved to counter predictable energy-based attacks, found themselves facing something they couldn't adapt to fast enough. The hive mind that had conquered 17 star systems was experiencing confusion for the first time in its existence. These new enemies didn't follow patterns that could be learned and countered. "Sir, the bioships are beginning to retreat," reported Jinwoo with amazement. "The entire swarm is pulling back from the system." On the main screen, Captain Minho nodded with satisfaction. The hive mind doesn't understand tactical retreat or strategic deception. When something doesn't fit their programming, they assume it's too dangerous to engage. "I'll be back eventually, but not today." Taman watched the retreating bioships and felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. These humans had done something the entire Galactic Council had been unable to accomplish. They had driven back the Vorthok swarm using methods that seemed primitive, but proved devastatingly effective as the last enemy vessels disappeared into hyperspace. The human fleet began recovering their boarding parties and rescue teams. They moved with the same cold efficiency they had shown in battle, saving every life they could while preparing for the next engagement. The galaxy would never be the same. The void between the stars had never seemed so quiet. Where moments before the space around the twin suns had blazed with weapons fire and exploding ships, now only debris drifted in lazy spirals, catching the light like scattered diamonds. The acrid smell of burnt metal and ozone still filled the recycled air aboard the Eternal Dawn. But for the first time in months, Admiral Taman could breathe without feeling the weight of certain death pressing down on his chest. Through the main viewport, he watched the human fleet maintain their positions with military precision. Their ships looked nothing like the elegant vessels of galactic civilization, where council ships curved and flowed like works of art. Human vessels were all angles and armor plating, covered in weapon ports and scarred from battle. They looked exactly like what they were: instruments of war built by a species that understood violence on a level the galaxy had forgotten. "Damage report," Taman ordered, though he kept his eyes fixed on the human ships. "Lieutenant Hyan-Woo's?" Clawed hands moved across his control panel, his face grim as the numbers appeared on his screen. "We've lost 67% of the fleet, sir. 43 ships destroyed, 19 more too damaged to continue fighting. Total casualties." Double quotes, he paused, his voice catching. "Over 200,000 dead or missing." The bridge fell silent. As the magnitude of their losses sank in, 200,000 lives lost in a single battle. And they had only survived because these unknown aliens had appeared at the last possible moment. Without the humans, every person in the system would be dead right now, consumed by the Vorthok swarm like so many others before them. "Sir," Communications Officer Jinwoo said hesitantly, "the human fleet commander is maintaining position at 15,000 kilometers. They're waiting for us to make first contact." Taman straightened in his command chair, suddenly aware that he was about to make history. For over 3 centuries, the Galactic Council had maintained strict protocols about contact with primitive species. There were committees, procedures, cultural evaluations that could take decades to complete. None of that mattered now. These primitives had just saved galactic civilization. Open a channel to the human fleet commander, he ordered. Full diplomatic. Protocols. Main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Naminho's weathered face. Even through the translation matrix, Taman could see the intelligence in the human's eyes. The quiet confidence of someone who had just accomplished the impossible. Behind him, the human bridge bustled with activity as crew members coordinated rescue operations and damage control. This is Admiral Taman of the Galactic Council, the human fleet commander. He began, using the formal language reserved for first contact situations, formally request the establishment of diplomatic relations between our peoples. Your intervention has saved countless lives, and we are deeply in your debt. He expected a long response about trade agreements, territorial boundaries, or technological exchanges, the usual topics that came up when civilized species first met. Instead, Captain Minho's reply was so simple, it took Taman's breath away. Where do you need us next? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Not what can we gain from this, or what are you willing to offer in return, but simply an offer to continue fighting. These humans didn't see the battle as a victory to be celebrated, but as just one engagement in a larger war that needed to be won. Around the bridge, Taman's officers stared at the screen in stunned silence. In all their histories, no species had ever responded to first contact by immediately offering military assistance. The implications were staggering. Captain Minho, Taman said carefully, your offer is generous. But surely your people will want to establish formal relations first. There are protocols, procedures that govern how civilized species interact. The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested amusement. Admiral, your people sent out a distress call asking for help from anyone who might. Answer. We answered. The Vorthok swarm is still out there, still consuming worlds and killing billions. Everything else can wait until the shooting stops. On the tactical display, Intelligence Officer Yang Jihai was already compiling data from the battle, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces as she analyzed human weapons, tactics, and ship capabilities. What she was seeing defied everything. The galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Sir, she said quietly to Minho, the Council databases show 17 more systems under Vorthok attack. The Kepler Defense Corps has lost contact with the Outer Rim colonies and long-range sensors, are detecting massive bioship formations moving toward the core worlds. Minho nodded as if he had expected this news. Transit time to the nearest system under attack? Approximately 6 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity, Jihai replied. Then we leave in 30 minutes, Minho decided. Time enough to transfer wounded personnel to Council medical ships and take on additional supplies. He looked directly at Taman through the screen. Admiral, I'm uploading our tactical database to your ships. Study it. Learn from it. Your people fight with honor, but honor won't stop the swarm. Taman felt his world shifting beneath him. For centuries, the Galactic Council had prided itself on evolving beyond the barbarism of warfare. They had built a civilization based on diplomacy, trade, and peaceful resolution of conflicts. It had worked perfectly until they encountered an enemy that didn't care about their rules. Captain, he said slowly, your species. Where do you come from? How did you develop such advanced military capabilities while remaining unknown to galactic civilization? Minho's smile was cold and sharp. We come from a world where everything tries to kill you, Admiral. The weather, the animals, the plants themselves are weapons. We've been fighting for survival since we learned to walk upright. When we finally reached the stars, we discovered a galaxy full of peaceful species who had forgotten what real warfare looked like. He paused, his expression becoming serious. We've been watching your civilization for decades, learning your languages, studying your technology. We knew this day would come when your peaceful methods wouldn't be enough to protect innocent lives. So we prepared. The implications hit Taman like a physical blow. Humanity had been observing galactic civilization for decades, building fleets in secret, preparing for a war that no one else saw coming. They hadn't revealed themselves for conquest or trade, but had waited for the moment when they would be needed most. The galaxy has spent 3 centuries believing that warriors were obsolete, Minho continued.
Yes.
That civilization had evolved beyond violence. You've built a beautiful society, Admiral, but you forgot that sometimes the greatest mercy comes from those willing to be merciless on behalf of others. On her screen, Yang Jihai finished compiling the battle data, knowing that everything was about to change. The human tactical methods, their weapons technology, their willingness to sacrifice individual ships for strategic advantage, it would revolutionize galactic military doctrine. More importantly, it would force every peaceful species to confront an uncomfortable truth about the nature of survival, as the human fleet prepared to depart for the next battle. Taman realized that the Galactic Council faced a choice that would define their future. They could continue pretending that Deathworlders like humanity didn't exist, maintaining their comfortable illusions about civilized warfare. Or they could accept that their peaceful civilization needed guardians. Wolves willing to do violence so that sheep could live in safety. The humans hadn't asked permission to become protectors of the galaxy. They had simply appointed themselves to the role, whether the galaxy wanted them or not. And as Taman watched their scarred warships disappear into hyperspace, heading toward the next desperate battle, he knew that the age of peace was over. The age of human guardianship had begun.